I looked away for a moment and I saw we had 50 people in the room. How did that happen? So, yeah, we're starting 1 minute early, according to the official big clock on that wall. And there is a big clock, although it's not on a wall, but it's up against a wall. Got a lot of the familiar faces I come to expect on Sundays in the room, including the Canadian robot lady did check in to say she won't be here today, which is how you do it. That's how you check in to say I won't be here today. But a lot of other people whose names I recognize, of course, Believe in Yourself, Mark Miller, What of, Alethea, Kenneth Bennington, Louis Browning, Matthias from Berlin, Germany. Believe in Yourself, I think I may have said that twice. Daniel Kester, of course, Randall Spencer checking in from Hope, Arkansas. And I'll buzz the bottom here, but Bob Blah Blah is out walking around his front yard, hoping to catch a Google camera catching him. But he says he had to go inside because the neighbors were starting to laugh and point. So, which is a callback to video I put up this morning. And of course, my favorite part of the story is that the guy's behind a 6.5-foot privacy wall, and the Google camera is like looking over the wall and got a clear picture of him, which he didn't appreciate. And by the way, I didn't emphasize this enough. The man is a police officer, so hey, what's with my lip? I guess that's just the way the light's hitting it. Never mind. Steve G's check in from San Diego. Vinny Sluga, hey, how you doing, my friend? I understand your mother was in the hospital. I hope she's doing better. Dan Boyd, Chris Lacey, Fatty Butterpants, and others. Every single week I struggle with these earphones. These things used to be perfect, and then something went out of whack, and they've never been the same since. I don't know what that's all about. I'm not even sure I need them, but the second I stop using them is when all audio heck is going to break loose. So you can't see it, but I actually cleaned up underneath my desk over there, because sometimes when the camera's turned just right, you can see there's a big mess over there. So I did a guest shot on Short Circuit, the podcast with the people from the Institute for Justice, and I got to rattle on for about 20 minutes. And before we went live, their producer said, Mr. Lehto, can I ask you a question? I go, he goes, are you sure you want that stuff behind you like that? I said, don't worry. My friends and viewers know what's going on, and they enjoy it. So thank you. Matthias will use UPS next time. Hope you'll get it. Oh, it's coming. It's just that there's no way that Germany could predict the mailing of something from Germany to the United States with pinpoint accuracy. I'm sure I'll probably get it next week, maybe. You never know. So Spaghetti Man says I had wired ones. The rubber started degrading and they never fit correctly. Well, these are wired, obviously, and they worked fine. And they came with like 20 different ear cushions that I thought, and they worked perfectly. And then they started whacking out on me, and I'm not sure if I got it twisted wrong or what, but I don't know. What are you going to do? Alethea is now laughing so hard she's crying. Andrew Zupke, I'm curious what might happen if the Google Street Map thing were to happen in America. That is, if it went by and caught a picture of you in the altogether in your backyard over a privacy fence. I think you could make an argument that's an invasion of privacy of some sort. You are entitled to, privacy where you expect it. I think putting up a privacy fence might be an indication of that. So, Jerry Bell says he rattled on for only 20 minutes. Well, that's twice as long as my average video. Oh. Art S says Steve got scammed on a shirt. I'm not sure what that means, unless you're referring to the shirt that's coming in the mail. It's a gift. So gifts aren't scams. The Prodigal Stranger says the best earbuds I ever had came with my Nintendo Game Boy. I had a Game Boy years ago. Not sure what ever happened to it. Played Missile Command on it. And Tetris, of course. Got to play Tetris in that. Airplane Mechanic. No, I did not hear about the Corvette in Florida. Found to have the same make, model, and year and VIN of one in Texas. One of them is fake. Presumably. It's possible they made a mistake. I've heard of occasional mistakes being made at the factory, but you're right. Most likely, one of them is a clone for whatever reason. Daniel Kester wants to know if I'm going to remain hydrated. It's still early. I couldn't be dehydrated just yet, but I've got the thermos of 50-50, which is Gatorade and water. I mix the Gatorade. I don't want to get too whacked out on Gatorade here. You know me, I like to stay sober. So no. And actually, CyberDoc, the Solo Cup is orange. They don't match. There's never a correlation. Once in a blue moon, the T-shirt will match my topic, but it almost never happens. When it does, people assume it's on purpose. It's like, no. Art shirt comment meant as a joke. Okay, I just wasn't sure because I can never know the context, and I wasn't sure if I missed something, because I missed that from time to time. Tim Nosman says, "Oh no, now the Corvette won't be one of one." Yeah, it can, however, say it's somehow one of two of one, because there's the scary part is probably that neither of those guys are the original owners if it's old, and so they probably have no way of knowing. Andrew Zupke, what flavor is the Gatorade? And I think you also mentioned earlier that you were also 6'2" tall, which I mentioned in the video about the height of the fence, because I was trying to point out that, but most people don't know that I'm tall because you only see me from like here up. But the Gatorade is there's several standard flavors like red, blue, and there's like a yellowish green. It's the yellowish green mixed with water, 50-50. So there you go. Leo the Nomad, was your Milo and Wolfie shirt new? No, actually, it's very old. It's very old. In fact, it was so old that I was surprised it was still in the mix. Probably 5 or 6 years old. Dan Boyd says, on Google Street Scene, I saw my friend from New Zealand getting out of his Jeep Cherokee. Yeah, I've seen it before where somebody's been on the Street View camera and they caught photographs showing it going by, and they can show it from both directions, almost like, Matrix style. Ben, can you talk about inheriting an estate? I was recently told my wife and I are going to be coming to a property in Northern California and have zero knowledge of where to start. Are you in California? If not, that might be tricky. But actually, yeah, no. The thing about an estate is that, somebody leaves you a bunch of stuff. You prefer they left you cash. It's easier. Cash is always good. It's a gift that keeps on giving. But if you inherit a piece of property, the big question is, does the property have any value? And if it does, do you want to keep it or sell it? Because if you hang on to it, you might wind up on the hook for things like, I don't know, property taxes going down the road, which you might not want. But yeah, I don't handle estates, although I mentioned, some of you know, my brother passed away in April, and I was the rep on his estate. And I've been overseeing some of that. I hired an attorney to help me with it because I don't do that. And so I'm learning a lot of this stuff for the first time. And it's a lot of waiting and documents and paperwork. But, so. Prodigal Stranger says, you remember the hookers complaining they were in the photos on Google Street View, especially on the street corners in the evenings. Dan Boyd, I live on a private drive now and they don't come back anymore, but have in the past. They also do hit certain areas more often than others. They're more likely going to go, like, say, up and down a major thoroughfare, because those will get updated more often. But if you're in a cul-de-sac in the middle of a subdivision out in the middle of nowhere, they'll probably come out there once every couple of years or something. So Art S, I love the Ferrari story. I bought a cheap old one, nothing more expensive than a cheap Ferrari. What's funny is, I hate to say this, but that Ferrari story, we're talking about a video I did for Ed Bolian on VinWiki. If you don't know about it, go to VinWiki on YouTube. He's got a couple million subscribers. And I went down and visited him, and I shot a bunch of videos. He's putting the videos up now one at a time. And I told the story about my neighbor when I was growing up across the street from me, who had a Ferrari, and I didn't know till later how unusual and cool the car was. And then it sold for $52 million at an auction a couple years ago. And the crazy part is that when the video went up, I got a lot of feedback. Oh my God, that's a great story. Love the story. And I'd mentioned that story briefly on this channel before. And I actually had a bunch of people send me emails. And I had people sending me emails going, Steve, you got the story completely wrong. He bought referring to the guy that I knew. He bought the car with no engine. Somebody else goes, Steve, you got the story wrong. He bought the car with the correct engine. Somebody else said, Steve, you bought the car with the incorrect engine, but not the one you. That's not the point of the story. The point of the story is that he bought it and everyone thought there was something wrong with it. Okay. What was wrong with it? I don't know. And I don't care. And it wound up being worth $52 million. Now, he didn't make that off it. He sold it to somebody else who sold it, but that's neither here nor there. Go watch the video and try to get over. I actually had people go, Steve, you need to take the video down. First of all, it's not my video. It's Ed's. It's on Ed's channel. No, he ain't taking it down. And number two, I had people telling me things that I know aren't true. I had someone tell me that the car never raced. Steve, you got this car never raced. Oh, so it turns out if you put something on the internet, people will dispute it. Witness multi-chick. Hey, Steve, happy Sunday. And to you, my friend. Richard Terhune, I inherited 40 acres of land from my dad's trust in Louisiana that I need to deal with. Is it gator infested swamp or is it downtown Baton Rouge? Yeah, Oceanic Sloth points out that you can contact Google and get them to blur out like things like addresses and license plates and things like that. And I think it's under the report a problem tab. But yeah, just Google it. How do I get my stuff blurred? And they'll allegedly take care of that for you. I've never tried it, but It's Not Me 07 says that he actually did do that. It took them over a year to do it. Bill A. DFW's check in from DFW. I am, says, I inherited most of my grandmother's designer clothes because I'm the only living person in the family that has the same size. Was she tiny? I've noticed that sometimes if you go back several generations in particular, you discover that people were a little bit shorter back then. And I've known a bunch of people who had tiny great-grandmothers or grandmothers. But Mark Miller, internet scholars, no, they're internet contrarians. They argue with everything. I actually had a guy write me the email that started, I normally like your videos, but you made a bunch of big mistakes over there on Ed Bullion's channel. Straight in the garbage. Straight in the garbage. Tim Nossum, you're so right about the lack of foreign cars in Michigan. It's weird to see every other car not being in accord. It's not as bad as it was. Remember, I'm talking about the 1970s. And so when I tell people that and they go, oh, no, you're exaggerating. I actually did have people kicking a car I was in because it was a Honda and we were in Detroit. So Art S, too bad you didn't get a ride. Yeah, no, and it's true. I mean, the thing's a 12-cylinder, but relatively small displacement. And it's designed for road racing. It's not designed for like the American muscle cars that are designed to have a light turn green and you stomp on the gas. But don't try turning. Why would you want to turn? Brett, 7284, good afternoon from West Bloomfield. And to you, my friend. Dark matter question, who owns the addresses? Are you referring to just like the number? Or are you referring to like the intellectual property of it? Eddie's albums, have you ever tried to reduce a property tax for a client or otherwise? No, I have not. I've known people who've done it though. I knew a guy who owned a large piece of property in an area where some stuff was worth a lot of money, and they just kept they were jacking his rates as much as they can under Michigan law, which is not that much. And I know that he fought it, and I believe he actually won, but I've heard mixed results. But there's a whole process. You got to go appear before some board and make your case. And I think you can make the argument later that they were, abusing their discretion or some kind of, arbitrary and capricious standard. And a court might rule in your favor. I am says, my grandmother wasn't exactly small. It's just that everyone else is really tall. Which I guess by logic deduction means that you probably aren't terribly tall compared to the rest of the people in your family. Matthias points out that anyone who's married will be told that he does a lot of things wrong eventually. And notice he says he. Scott Summers, what can't turn left? Well, it's not turning left. It's big American muscle cars weren't designed for road courses. It's a joke. Carl's Corner says turning is overrated, and of course, Carl's Corner could get us to think about turning around a corner. Oh, Mike Lackner, I made it. I hope this camera's not on. I can't see you. You can see me. My camera's on. Tigerman99515 says, odd with cars. I grew up in Southern California. No one my age owned an American car. I went to law school in California, and while I was out there, I bought a used car, and it was an American-made car. And somebody goes, hey, I heard you bought a new car. And I go, yeah, I bought a little Dodge Daytona. And they go, what? Dodge? Why would you buy a Dodge? And they kept saying Dodge. Like, what? Dodge? Like it was a dirty word. And I said, what are you talking about? They actually said, why would you buy an American car? And I said, why would you be so opposed to it? And they're like, because they're all junk. And I said, well, I grew up in Detroit, and I knew people who worked at the car companies. And at that moment in time that I was having that conversation, my brother worked at one. So Daniel Kester, hey, Steve, do you know why Packard failed as a car company? I've never studied it, no. I know there's a Packard plant in Detroit. There's a Packard proving grounds north of Detroit. The Packard plant has been finally taken care of, but the proving grounds are still kind of there. They use them for something. I've never been there, though. I've driven past them. But my understanding is that they're just generally relatively ugly and probably expensive, but I don't know. They're around for a while. Lee Kincaid, I like my Saturn. I liked Saturn's idea. The idea was they're going to start a new car company and just literally not worry about any of the legacy issues. And I remember the billboards when I was out in California goes, it's not this year's version of last year's anything. Brand new car company. William Whaley, I sent you a package via USPS. Check your email. I got a bunch of stuff in the regular mail a couple days ago. I have a big pile of stuff, including a bunch of T-shirts. So, Daniel Kester answers the question somebody else asked about Lehto's pasties on US 2, just outside of St. Ignace, although they have a storefront in St. Ignace. I drove by it very recently, but I did not stop. I was in a hurry. Also, you got to pass by when you're hungry. It's hard to stop when you're not hungry because these things are big and you don't want to eat them cold. So, Dan Boyd, Saturns were okay. I test drove one and the thing rattled like a shopping cart. And I turned to the salesman and I go, do they all do this? And he didn't say do what. He said, yes, they all do this. Like whatever I was saying, he was, yep, they all do this. Steve G says you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a silver Tacoma here in San Diego. Oh, I know. And don't get me wrong. I have people who get mad at me like, what have you got against Japanese cars? I didn't say I had anything against them. I've just just never owned one. That's all. I'm allowed to do that. Yeah, Witness Multi-Chick says, but Saturn the planet is pretty cool. It's nice as far as planets go, of course. It was an unusual name for a car company. I mean, I understand that they probably did some market testing and thought that the word had a relatively positive or neutral meaning to most English speakers. But I always thought it was a little odd because also their font they used looked kind of like NASA's font. And I think a lot of people thought it had something to do with the government. But Cyberdoc says if the Constitution grants the right to pursue happiness, does it also grant the right to achieve and sustain happiness, or must we remain in perpetual pursuit? I'm glad you asked me that because the Constitution does not grant you the right to pursue happiness. You're referring to the Declaration of Independence. I kid you not. Look it up. But yeah, it's interestingly phrased. Padre, the worst car I ever drove was a Neon. I never drove a Neon. Those things were tiny, but they sold quite well for a brief period of time. They were kind of cute. I think they were unveiled with a set of TV commercials around the Super Bowl. And they were cute and they were inexpensive, but they turned out to not be that good. "808 Eco Beast is checking in from Honolulu, Hawaii, I believe. Thank you for checking, my friend. Mark Miller, I'm sure you've answered this, but have you had a lemon from an Asian automaker? Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. It's a matter of numbers. It's impossible to build a perfect car. It is. I don't I've known people who've I talked to a guy last week. I'm not gonna mention the brand of car. I talked to a guy last week who bought a brand new car, was driving it with 700 miles on it, and it stalled, and he had to get it over the side of the road and mess with it for a while to get it restarted. Took it to the dealership, and they had it for a long time. Said we can't find out what's wrong with it. They don't doubt it happened. Apparently, it recorded something, but they go, we don't know why it did that. They gave it back to him. It did it again. And did I mention $130,000? A buck 30. It's an expensive car. It's got some kind of problems. So 116-3562 says General Motors named the Saturn division after the Saturn V rocket, a symbol of American innovation and technological achievement. That very well could be true. I may have heard that before. I'm not sure. But of course, the problem with that is that most people wouldn't have gotten that. They just hear the word Saturn because I think the Saturn V rocket reached its heyday, what, in the 60s? And so if you're pitching those cars in the 90s, the people who'd be familiar with it were probably aging out, but I don't know. I could be wrong. 808 Eco Beast, I liked my neon. And by the way, there are almost always good examples and bad examples of almost any car. I had a green Gremlin, which I joke about all the time, but that car was dependable. I mean, it fired up in the morning. I got me to school. I'd park it in the back of the parking lot and run inside so people never saw what car I got out of. And then I'd sneak out to it and escape after school. But it was dependable. And the entire time that my family owned it, it blew out a freeze plug once. And I think somebody wasn't paying attention to the level of the antifreeze and so on. Matthias, Ford is very successful in Germany. Ford's got a very, very long legacy in Germany as well. In fact, it predates World War II, as I seem to recall. Mexican Spec is pointing out that the whole thing about calling a car a Nova was a bummer in Mexico. You are correct, Mexican Spec. That's an English rumor because Nova is one word. Nova would be two words, and the car actually sold well. And so people tell these stories about like, oh my gosh, the car flopped. No, it didn't. We don't need to examine why it flopped because it didn't flop. Carl's Corner, if you buy a Lemon car, do you get a salvage title? No. In some states, you'll get a Lemon branded title, but only about 12 states require that. You can find out the car has a Lemon history with Carfax. Sam Crack, who's got one of the greatest channels on YouTube, good friend of mine, he routinely buys old Lemon Law buybacks and sees, to see if he can fix them. And he's fixed a few, but he's had a few go bad on him. And in fact, right now he's working on some Audi. I forgot the model of the Audi he's working on, but it's got the wacky doors that come up on the side and all that. And it's got all kinds of weird issues. And he's starting to realize that one might be a problem. I'm not sure if that was a Lemon or not, but I know he's done a bunch of Lemons recently. So Cyberdocs will stay cool and hydrated, everyone. Yeah, so where I am in Southeast Michigan, I show 85 degrees right now. But it's been hot and humid the last week or so. We were in the 90s for much of the week. And I got up this morning. It was overcast. And I thought, I've been doing my Peloton a lot in the mornings. Well, I'm going to go for a bike ride. It's a Sunday morning. There won't be any traffic. Jumped on the old mountain bike, went out and did 6 miles, came back. Great. What's funny is as you're moving, the air is going by you. And it feels so good. And you stop the bike, and all of a sudden you feel like the moisture, like the humidity pressing on you. Mark Miller, didn't Ford have the Merkur division in Germany? Merkur, yes. And of course, they're the ones who brought us the Merkur XR4 Ti, which I think is one of the goofiest collections of letters and numbers ever added to a car name. Or actually, I think it was the car name. LFES says happens to anything with lots of moving parts. One of my e-bikes kept playing up from brand new, no problems with any other my bikes. Well, it's not just lots of moving parts; it's lots of moving parts and electronics. And modern cars, the electronics are mind blowing. So, 808 Eco Beast says I wanted to buy my mom a Saturn because she occasionally would bump into stuff. Occasionally. Yeah, the car had like plastic bumpers, which should be which should take a few minor bumps. So there you go. It's not Mio 790 still hasn't hit 100F here in DFW. Yeah, we didn't hit 100, but we had feels like temperatures in the hundreds. You know what it feels like outside. And I mean, literally, air conditioning is running constantly in the house. In the car, yes. In the house, eh. Eddie's albums. Is it legal that Subaru dealers know how many miles on your car when they send email reminders for oil changes? Creepy. Yeah, I've always been bothered by that. But I've noticed that I've gotten notices regarding some of my newer vehicles that are clearly triggered by me hitting certain milestones. And that's because the car company can track all that information. And I personally think that they should require it to where if they're going to use the information, they've got to ask you and it's got to be opt in, meaning that unless they get your permission, they can't do it. But that'll never happen. So there you go. John Michael Karma, the Mercure Scorpio was interesting. The Mercure Scorpio. Tim Nossum, radio host Jim Rome tells funny horror stories of his XR4 Ti. I had a friend who had one. I seem to recall he had trouble with it though, but I think it had something. I forgot what the drivetrain was, but it's just unusual enough to throw off, people hanging around at the dealership. So standard deviation says I always thought the Nissan Murano was an unfortunate name as Marano is Spanish for pig. Kia, Kia, the car company, Kia. Anybody who's studied World War II or any battle knows that KIA stands for killed in action. So you've got your POWs, prisoners of war, MIA, missing in action, and KIA, killed in action. Here comes a Korean car company, Kia. I still have to tell myself, oh, no, 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 no. That's a car company. It's lowercase I, lowercase a. Oh, boy. Mexican spec, do they track your information? Do they estimate it based on time? I personally believe that since all that data is being gathered by the onboard computers and stuff, and the car is connected to something, that they gather it that way. But I'm sure it's going to depend on the manufacturer and so on. Ella Thea said she'd not noticed that regarding Kia, but now that I've told you, you'll never be able to unsee it. Spaghetti Man says near the Kia factory, there's a Kia highway. I was confused. Oh boy. Mexican spec is fighting with the internet. You're never going to win that one, my friend. It's like running around trying to stomp out fires, and you're the only person in the woods. Yoda Beast, first car was a 1984 Renault Alliance, orange, looked like a pumpkin. Yeah, we had Renaults in America for a while. It had something to do with Chrysler. Chrysler had some kind of business relationship with them, and they were importing cars. And somewhere along the line, they were selling them in America through Chrysler dealers. I know a lot of them are defective. A lot of them were defective. Yeah, Witness Multi-Chick, why not have a POW car, the POW car? Like Batman, POW, right? Tim Nossum, my Maverick, messaged my phone with a low tire alert. It's both nice and creepy. But you put that app on your phone, right? Like I actually have an app on my phone for my Ford Explorer, the most recent one I bought, which is 2024. And I put the app on there. And so I can look at my app and say, like, how much gas I've got in my gas tank and if my tires are okay. But I mentioned that I had the same app on my phone 5 years ago with my older Explorer. And one time it said, your tires are low. So I went out and I checked, and it wasn't. It was just a cold day. And so I tried to clear it, and it was cleared from the car, but it wouldn't clear from the app. It was a known problem with the app that the app was buggy. And so I removed the app and just tossed it. Dan Boyd said I like to pronounce it Renault. Renault. And Peugeot is Puget. Puget. Witness Multi-Chick says it could be the Pow Boom Bam car. Steve G had many POS cars. You think back, that's something I think that there probably are countries on earth that don't understand that in America, especially back in the 70s, it seems, 70s and 80s, you could find cars that drove and buy them for like $100 and drive around in it. And the car would actually be safe and reliable transportation. It was not like scrap value was too low because scrap wasn't worth that much back then, apparently. And I know guys who bought cars for $50, $100, and drove them for the longest periods of time. And I've speak to people in other countries where number one, driving is more expensive to begin with, but number two, they're like, wait, you buy cars for how much? And that's the thing is that obviously with inflation, things have gone up ever since. Nowadays, you might get lucky if you can buy a car that runs for a couple $1,000, $1,000 maybe. But scrap value on a car is $500. If you got a car that's complete, you can get a scrapper to come give you $500 for it. Ask me how I know. Mike Lackner says we've got the opposite of a lemon. We've got a 2006 Hyundai Entourage 3 with 320,000 miles. We've replaced a timing belt and the alternator twice. And those are wear items. If you can get 100,000 miles out of an alternator, that's not a defective alternator. Oh. It's not me, 07. My 77 Plymouth Fury was $400 in 1986. It's great for 2 years. And probably weighed 19,000 pounds. Plymouth Fury, that's one of the big ones, right? Eddie's albums, my 68 Skylark cost me $175. My mom had a Skylark. 68 or 69, one of the earlier Skylarks. And I never drove it because I was too young, but one of my older brothers drove it. And I can tell you right now, those things can take a beating. They just can. Cyberdoc inherited 2 French poodles named Peugeot and Pougette. Dan Boyd, my friend's sister, survived rolling her Le Car only to be murdered while out jogging. That's both fascinating and horrifying. But a Le Car, which is a car that I do occasionally make fun of because of the name, isn't that the one that had the weird roof that was cloth that you could push back and make it like semi-open, which back then was really weird and ugly. But to be in a car that small that rolled and walk away from it is unbelievable. Friend of mine, I've told the story before. A friend of mine was in a little Honda Civic, driving out in the middle of nowhere, and she was the passenger in her own car, and the guy was driving. Came around a corner, and there was a flock of turkeys in the road, and he swerved to avoid the turkeys, put it in a ditch, and the car rolled. And when the state police showed up, the guy goes, "What are you doing?" Because the guy's sober, And he goes, "I didn't want to hit the turkey." Cop goes, "Next time, hit the turkey." So, Bill McMahon, my friend, bought an old Chevy for $50, drove it for 6 months, and junked it for $60. It's funny. I know there's some stories I probably never told you before, but they're not that interesting to me. But if it ties in, I'll do it. My brother Dave, the one who recently passed away, had an old Nova, 70s Nova. And he gave it to another brother of mine and said, "Hey, look, I'm done with this thing. I can't get any money for it, but it's drivable. You can have it if you want." He goes, "Sure." So he takes his car. So Dave gets another car and moves on with his life. And my brother's got this Nova, and he's driving it for years and years and years and years and years. And one day it's parked in front of my parents' house. and a drunk driver coming down the street rear ends it at like 60 miles an hour. Just bends the car in half. And my brother goes running out, and this drunk woman stumbling around going, "Hey, what happened?" And her car's up on their lawn. My brother's car is destroyed. And in Michigan, if you hit a legally parked car, the insurance of the hitting car pays for it. My brother got a check. And my brother, who gave him the car, goes, "So what happened?" And he goes, "I got this check from the insurance company." And the check he got was larger than what my brother had paid for the car years earlier. And Dave's like, now he's asking me this, and my other brother's not there. He goes, "Shouldn't I have gotten some of that? I gave him the car. Like, shouldn't I get something for that?" Like, I don't know what the etiquette is on that. It's kind of unusual. Oh boy. Code Meester Beats. I think my first car was $700. I believe gas is about $1.75. I told the story. It's coming up on VinWiki one of these days. I told the story about my $300 Dodge Charger. Told the complete story. $300 car, gas is below $1 a gallon back in 1979. Skylar Perone's checking from Wake County, North Carolina, home of the famous deed fraud case a few months back. Tiger Man 99515, back in the 60s, you could buy a Citroen for $500, drive it around Europe all summer, and then sell it for $500 before you went home to America. Yeah, I actually had someone call me from Europe and said, "I'm going to come to America. How feasible is it that I can come there, buy a car, drive around, and then just dump the car and leave?" And I'm like, I hadn't thought about that, but it's probably doable. The one tricky part is that I think to get registration, you're going to need to have a local address of some sort. But if you had a friend here, you can probably work that out too. So, Spaghetti Man, everyone had a relative that had a Reliant K, a Reliant automobile, as the Bare Naked Ladies might sing, who, by the way, are coming to Michigan this week. Michael Myers, I still have the bill of sale for my first car I bought in the 1970s. I've never actually bought a car merely with a bill of sale, but I save window stickers from new cars. That's it. Janice Ellery, back in the 70s, you could buy a brand new car for $2,500. Yeah, you could. Lil M, bar exam this week. Any tips? Yeah, what are you doing here? Study. Don't burn out. No, but seriously, study. You don't want to take that exam twice. Study as hard as you can. But I guess it makes sense. The July bar. Hadn't thought about that. But yeah, I took the bar exam once. And if I had to take it again, I wouldn't have been happy. Witness multi-chick, can you P.O. box it for the registration? Some states won't allow you to. Some states require you to have a street address. And as goofy as that sounds, their thinking is if you have a P.O. box and it expires, who's to say that stuff will get forwarded to you? Remember, they got to be able to contact you by mail for some odd reason. So I pity the fool. My first job was at a gas station. We got a 10 cent per gallon discount. Gas at somewhere was 89 cents. Wait, you got to see, I worked at a gas station. I never get discounts on anything. They charged us retail. Those bastards. I was kidding. Sometimes I listen to myself in the 1920s and people reminisce about the 1800s. They reminisced about the 1910s. Okay? Everybody reminisces. We tend to remember the good stuff. We try not to focus on the bad stuff. And especially when it comes to kids these days. And then you go and look, and turns out you can find people back in the Roman era complaining about lazy teenagers. Michael Myers, how many times did JFK Jr. fail the New York bar? I believe he failed it twice. The New York bar is one of the more difficult bars there is. I believe he passed it the third time, though. Although I don't think he was planning on practicing a lot of law. I'm sure he was aiming for politics. Prodigal stranger, icy hot for the neck. A lot of looking down. I've told that story before. I spent 2 days doing this. And I walked out of the second day and I was like trying to straighten my neck out. I'm like, maybe once in a while I should have just done this with my neck. Maybe I should have. But luckily, I passed. Daniel Kester, my first job was a dishwasher at a Jerry's restaurant, which is now a Little Bear Diner. I've never worked in a restaurant or any other food service business. Never have. I know people who did, but I just never did. So I'm not quite sure how that works out. But it's not me 07. I've never failed the bar exam. Are you 0 for 0 or are you 1 for 1? Snipe out 1080. I swear I have that shirt in red. This, the Eddie Bauer shirt. I went into the Eddie Bauer store yesterday and I was wearing one of these shirts. And I said, do you have any of these in long sleeve, any color? And they go, no. I go, okay. Do you have any of these shirts? They said, yeah. And I went over and I had them all. So Eddie's albums, I worked at a gas station at the time when they had both lead and lead free. Oh, so did I. And I remember people coming in where they'd taken a screwdriver and a hammer and punched out the unleaded thing in their gas filler and said, will you put regular in there? And I'd go, no, I can't. And our bosses had told us, we will fire you if we ever catch you doing that. And you can tell the customers that. And I had customers going, well, can I pump it myself? And at that time, we were not self-serve. And I'd go, no, I'm sorry, we can't do that. And think to myself, aren't you scared when you're sitting there whacking at a screwdriver and a hammer with that thing with the gas vapors coming out of it? I understand the odds are slim. So, Fatty Butterpants, the Little River Band had a song called Reminiscing. Tigerman 99515. Don't car manufacturers in Europe still have a European delivery option? I seem to recall David Tracy doing a video about that years ago when he was at Jalopnik, going and visiting a place over there and then talking about that. Spaghetti Man says, I love my dishwasher job, free food. I've heard from people who work at restaurants that say, yeah, the free food is a big bonus. So there you go. Mr. Smithers, yay, my favorite Michigan attorney. Thank you. I appreciate that. If you're talking about me, you might not be. Daniel Kester's at Eureka, California on Main Street at the South I-5 exit. That's where the restaurant that he worked at. Standard deviation, ever try to self-serve gas in Oregon? Oregon is that they still don't allow that, correct? And what about New Jersey? I thought one of them recently changed to start allowing it or something. Janice Ellery in Florida, I think you're allowed 5 tries. Most states will let you try as many as you want. They don't care. There was a guy in California who took like 52 tries, and he finally passed. And the same time he passed, his son passed the bar exam. And his son had not been born when he tried it the first time. And so I don't know what he did for a living in the meantime, but he was going and fail, going and fail, going and fail. And that's a scary concept because, but yeah, Michael M says Oregon does allow self-service now, but there's still a lot of places that don't. And Lawrence Staten says it's allowed in some areas, but not in urbanized counties. Boomer says it was a federal offense to modify the filler neck on a vehicle requiring the use of unleaded gasoline. Oh no, it was. That's one of those things. I always wondered what would happen is if you tried to trade that vehicle in, if a dealership saw that and said, "Hey, this has been tampered with," because dealerships sometimes get picky about tampering with emissions devices and so on. And I realize that your gas filler neck isn't an emissions device in that sense, but Art S says New Jersey is the last holdout of no self-serve gas. Jay Klein, European delivery is still a thing. It went away for a while in 08. And during COVID, I bought my 07 Saab on European delivery. I think Saab is the company that David Tracy was talking about, too. Mrs. Teresa, 1999's check-in from Geneva, New York. Red Fox Mad, go Big Blue, Michigan football, bring a national championship back to Michigan. You know, I've mentioned this before. I'm willing to coast for a while. I mean, they might be good. I don't know. All I know is they had 4 years. 3 of them, they made it to the playoffs. 1 of them, they won. And then the next year, which was a bad year, they beat Michigan State, Ohio State, and Alabama. So I'm okay. I'm okay for a while. But yeah, if they do well, I'll be happy. It's not me 07. Why does Spectrum keep sending me sign up now specials when I'm already a customer? Bad marketing. I keep getting things from American Express going, you've been approved. And then on the other side, it goes, approval not guaranteed. Okay. If I've been approved, how can that not be guaranteed? So yeah, Mrs. Teresa says that this would have been the weekend for the cruising night, maybe next year. Yeah, there's so many car shows out there. By the way, if anybody is around right now who might be in southeastern Michigan, I think it's next in a couple weekends from now. There's a thing called the Troy Traffic Jam. Troy Traffic Jam. I go there almost every year. I bring one of my cars. If it's perfect weather, I bring the Cobra. If it's threatening rain, I bring the Viper. And if it's raining, I'll show up, but I'll bring my Explorer and I won't park on the display field. Oh boy. Yeah, Fatty Butterpan says if you want to do that thing right with the unleaded gas, you've got to replace the catalytic converter with a test pipe. A test pipe. Tim Nosman says, to be fair, self-serve pumpers rip off hoses all the time and drop nozzles, spill gas, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, I remember when you're talking about self-serve, my first thought was, wait, you're going to trust the average person to pump their own gas? Like I was convinced that half the people I pumped gas for could never pump gas ever. But I guess, where there's a will, there's a way. Jay Klein, American Express wants me to upgrade to a card with a $450 annual fee. They got to make their money somehow. Oh, Mark Miller, who's coaching U of M now that Harbaugh's gone. Sharon Moore. I like Sharon Moore. I think he's a good guy. I'm disappointed in Jim Harbaugh because he was such a Michigan guy. I'm not going to go into sports too heavily here, but he won a national championship, then he's bailed, and he took people with him. And I've had people go, but Steve, if you were a football guy, the Super Bowl is the thing you want to win. Okay. But there are people who can go down in history. You can be someplace at an institution, become part of the institution where 100 years from now, your name is on the side of a building or a stadium. Don't you want that? That's what I would have thought, but what are you going to do? Drewski, can I still do donut burnouts in the parking lot in Flint? I would not recommend it. As an attorney, I would not recommend it. Yeah, Lewis Browning reminds us Coyote versus Acme hits theaters August 28th. That was announced, I believe, yesterday, the day before. A lot of people sent me stuff, including somebody sent me a copy of the poster. The poster. It's really cool. So I'm looking forward to that. I will try to put together a showing someplace that, now we have a rough date. We can do that. So Spaghetti Man, my ex-wife wants to go to law school, is 36, too old to start that career. No, especially not if she's been doing something useful in the meantime. A lot of people who do quite well as attorneys started another profession, then went to law school. I know engineers, insurance people, salespeople, all kinds of stuff. And think about this. If you went to law school at 22, because you got your undergrad, went straight to law school, you graduated at 25, you got straight A's, you get hired by some big law firm. You're 25 years old and you walk into a conference room to meet a client who is in their 60s, who's been doing business for 40 years. And they're looking at you, a 25-year-old, with your brand new, still wet ink bar admission certificate. What can you tell them about business? Nothing. You can tell them about the law, but they'd rather see someone who comes in and goes, "Hey, guess what? I know what you're talking about because I worked in business." And so there's a big deal. So I think you can at 36. Keep in mind, it'll take her 3 or 4 years. She'll be getting out at 40, 41. But, decade or two ahead of her of law practice. And quite frankly, it's not heavy lifting. Oh. Witness multi-chick, I almost forgot, new Spinal Tap movie coming soon. Yeah, that's coming up. I actually spent a couple days ago, went down a rabbit hole watching clips of Spinal Tap doing interviews in character. The fact that those guys can stay in character and talk about that stuff the way they do, it's always very, very funny. So I'm looking forward to that. David C., have you weighed in on the overzealous record labels copyright striking YouTube videos? I'm not sure if I have or not. That's a really weird problem because there used to be a time where you could post anything on YouTube. 4 running away since law school is 3 or 4 years. Well, it can be 2, it can be 3, it can be 4. Depends on if you're going full-time nights or an accelerated program. I did it in 2. But with respect to music on YouTube, YouTube started getting complaints from record companies going, "Hey, you're playing our music, and we can just start making you take down those videos, or you just pay us the royalties." So YouTube struck deals with record companies, and record companies then put in software to look for songs of theirs, which are hair trigger, meaning that if you play 3 seconds of a song, they'll go, "Hey, you're playing our song." And that would be fair use. And so they apparently aren't taking anything into account with respect to fair use. And so I know people like Rick Beato. Rick Beato has talked about this, about how impossible it is for him to talk about music without having his videos demonetized because they're constantly being hit with copyright strikes from record companies going, "This is our music." It's not a copyright strike in that sense, but he gets hit with the claim. And so he's testified before Congress about it. But the problem with fair use is there's no bright line. It's like you can use this much, but not this much. There's no bright line on that. So, Carl's Corner, meanwhile, TikTok does it all the time. TikTok does all kinds of stuff all the time. Steve says, I find it interesting when people play music and they say, "I don't own the rights to the music." They'll also post videos and go, "I don't own the rights to the video." That doesn't excuse what you're doing, but they all did that. MHOA, a friend of mine went to school at 60. I had a woman in my class when I was there who was in her 60s. She was in her 60s. Fred Blowers wants to know if self-serve for gasoline is illegal in New Jersey. Why do we let customers recharge their electric cars by themselves? That's an interesting question, my friend. Witness multi-chick, yeah, Beato has great perspective. I love Rick Beato. I'm trying to find an excuse to where I can talk him into letting me come in his studio and talk music with him. I don't know anything about music, but having worked in radio, I know a lot of songs. I'd love to sit down and talk to him about wacky music and go, "Okay, why do I like this song and no one else does? Why is that?" Maybe you can explain it to me. Janice Ellery says plenty of bootleg concerts on YouTube. Oh, and the amazing thing is some of them aren't even bootleg. It's just they've been sitting out there on VHS for the longest time and somebody dug it up. I've found some recent video postings where the videos were shot 30, 40 years ago on like handheld VHS, big shoulder cameras, Mark Miller, do you get upset when someone pronounces your last name Lehto instead of Lehto? Not at all. Not at all. In fact, on the Institute for Justice introduction, the man said Lehto a couple of times. I don't care. When I had the Canadian robot lady do the intro for my show, where she says, "Here's Steve Lehto," I talked to her in advance and said, "By the way, the correct pronunciation is Lehto. I don't expect you to do that, but you just pop the T, Lehto, as opposed to Lehto." And Lehto. And said, she goes, "I got that." So Code Mr. B says, "I did that on a remix. The copyright holder left my video up, but they get the royalties." Yeah, and that's what happens to Rick Beato. And so he'll do like, the top 20 songs and he'll play like 5 seconds of each. And all of them hit him with that, and they all take the money divided up 20 different ways. Just stupid. Andrew Kruchowski, I'm a DJ. No, I know music. I have no musical skill. I don't play any instruments. I don't read music. I don't understand the musicality of something, but I know music in the sense that I know the songs, the artists, that kind of thing. Mark Miller says mentally, I correct folks' grammar. You mean like the way I look at that sentence and go, there ought to be an apostrophe after the S on folks? Joke. Kyle Owens, thanks for the great videos. Thank you, my friends. I appreciate that. Art S, you familiar with Rhino Records? Of course. Rhino Records, they revived a bunch of stuff. There was a weird time period when LPs and 45s were still a thing, and records would go out of print, and you couldn't find a record. And you're like, I want to find this record that had this song on it. And you couldn't find it. You go to a used record store and you try to find a record. And then later on, when CDs came out, at first they were expensive, but as the prices were coming down, there were companies like Rhino Records, and remember the Pebbles collections of assorted artists, started going out and finding these songs and reissuing them in different formats, and you get them, and they kept these songs alive, and so it's pretty cool. But nowadays, of course, 99% of all songs you ever want to hear, you can find on YouTube. 99%. I know of some you cannot find on YouTube, but that's another story altogether. Andrew Kruchowski, you don't need to know the mechanics to know the emotion. No, that's correct. I can't paint, but I can admire a painting. That's the whole point. So CyberDoc, has anyone encountered someone vaping their coffee? Were they actually like filling their lungs with it? Marjan K. Cavusi, you are good at everything, sir. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you, Marjan. I appreciate that. 116-3562. Have you been to Jack White's record press factory in Detroit? It's pretty cool. No, I've seen it on television, and I really respect what he's doing. And he thought vinyl was cool, and he got his hands on an old record press factory where they can press vinyl. And I'll admit, I don't have a record player anymore. I do not have a record player anymore, but I've been thinking about getting one because I do like the warmth and that sound that the needle first makes when it first hits the vinyl and finds the groove. Sometimes I listen to myself. Why did 33s have a small hole, but 45s had a big one? Primarily for marketing purposes. I saw 33s with a small hole. They made them. But primarily, there was actually a battle at one point in time. People thought that LPs wouldn't sell because people would want to buy specific songs. Alethea, I'm in no position to be correcting anyone's spelling, punctuation, or grammar. But you used the possessive on anyone's correctly, so there you go. Mike Lackner says record stores were a great way to meet a potential mate. I grew up in Birmingham, Michigan, up Woodward Avenue from Royal Oak, and there was a place called Harmony House. And they had a bunch of locations in southeastern Michigan. I used to go, I could go there and spend hours in there. I couldn't buy half the stuff I wanted to, but Jay Klein says I use coffee flavored nicotine pouches. I thought you said coffee flavored nicotine patches, like the type you put on your skin. Oh boy. Art S, the White Stripes were awesome live. I never saw them live. Never did. Blah, blah, blah. Beta versus VHS. There's also a band called VHS for Beta. Pretty good band, too. 116-3562. I thought the big hole on 45s had something to do with the platter setup on jukeboxes. That could be. I've never heard that before, though. But that could be. Spaghetti Man Techniques 1200s. Everybody knew that guy who had the stack of hi-fi equipment, and there'd be like there's the tuner on top, and then there's like a preamp, and there's a graphic equalizer. There's all kinds. I mean, I knew a guy who had a reel to reel, and he actually belonged to some club that would send out reel to reels of classical music, and then he had these big speakers, and he put the reel on and play the reel. And how inconvenient. And he's like, but I can hear the difference. I'm sure you can. Steve, how do you not have a turntable? Because every single song I've ever wanted to listen to in the last 30 years, I've got a digital copy of or a CD of. So, Airplane Mechanic, please pray for Camp Mystic. They've finally found all the victims of the flood from the camp. 27 families are not having a good weekend because they lost children. Yeah, it's horrible. Thank you for mentioning that. The Clash 122, and I hope you're naming yourself after the band. My roommate, who was in a karaoke, had a Sony 100 disc capacity CD changer. Who's got the time to change discs? But of course, you're karaoke, I guess. But I'm a big fan of the Clash. Just putting that out there. Never saw them live. I know people who did. I wish I had. But Clash, although they do have a big following, one of the most underrated bands of all time. Oh, Mark Heil, the good days when you could buy concert tickets in record stores. Don't forget, you could also buy concert tickets at travel agencies. I was backstage at a Van Halen concert, but the year before I bought a ticket to be there, and I bought it at a travel agency on Maple Road in Birmingham. And they announced on I think it was a Saturday morning. They literally, I remember the disc jockey coming out at 9 a.m., all freaked out, going, oh my God, Van Halen just announced they're coming to Detroit by Cobo Hall. Here's the date. Tickets go on sale 10 o'clock this morning. And I didn't have to work till the afternoon. I jumped in my car and I raced, and I was there when they opened the door up. And I go, quick, 2 Van Halen tickets. The woman's like trying to warm up the machine and prints out 2 tickets. I had decent seats too because of that. But yeah, the good old days. And then, of course, came along Ticketmaster and all that, where they Convenient Ticket Corporation. And prior to that, I forgot the name of the company, but you go to Hudson's or Macy's or whatever it was back then. And then also there was a kiosk at the mall. So Bob Blah says, I've never agreed that albums sound better than CDs. On the other hand, I think CDs are much clearer, cleaner, and crisper. But the point is not that albums sound better, because number one, that's subjective. Albums have a different sound, and many people will say it sounds warmer because you are hearing some noise that's not part of the song, but it is so low and it's something you're used to that you're okay with it. But think about this. Many bands in the old days recorded to tape. Then the tape was transferred to the LP. And it wasn't until probably the 90s that you had bands that were recording digital, mastering digital, and then going to CD. And the time's going to change on that. But in the old days, you'd actually look on a CD and it would go AAD or DDD, indicating whether it was audio, digital, or digital, as to recording, mastering, and or mixing and then mastering. So Dan Boyd's the first time I heard Bachman Turner Overdrive. I was riding my friend's dad's 71-ish sedan DeVille, taking care of business. I love Bachman Turner Overdrive. Andrew Kruchowski, London Calling. I heard that yesterday on the radio. I think it was on Sirius First Wave. Larry's Diner says you can't roll a joint on an MP3. That is true. Or so I hear. Oh, boy. Andrew Kruchowski says you could always dub the AM radio programs onto your steel wire recorder. Wire recorder. Art S. got tickets to Nirvana the way you got tickets to see Van Halen. Tim Brock says there's a problem with Ticketmaster and that they're a monopoly. Oh, Actually, there's 2 or 3 of them now, but it's still such a small group that they act like a monopoly. But yeah, if you and the amazing part is they don't do anything. They literally don't do anything. They take no risk, just take a gigantic slice and print money. And it's sad. It's sad, but Mustang MG05 stub hub. Yeah, David's the analog digital. I'm sorry, I accidentally said audio, right? I meant analog. Dayon Dodson says the warmth is mostly due to the tubes which powered the audio equipment in those days. Ribbon mics also made a distinctive sound. Are you talking about the tubes in the recording equipment or in the instruments like the guitar amplifiers and stuff? But yeah, there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. But obviously nowadays it's all wires and computers. Oh. Cyberdoc, what about being in the parking lot scalping tickets? Oh, yeah. Tim Brock says Ticketmaster needs to be broken up under Sherman antitrust laws. I believe that they have taken on Ticketmaster, and I think they claim that because they've got competitors that they're okay. And so it's kind of like, eh. Ken Wittenberg, is there still AM radio? I was on a little bit of a road trip last week, and I actually turned on my AM dial and was buzzing around looking for signals. I couldn't get much, but there is some, primarily in large markets. There's almost always 1 or 2 legacy stations. In Detroit, it's WJR and WWJ. But beyond that, most of them, and by the way, they're all running the same syndicated stuff. They sound alike from city to city. Blah, blah, blah. Do you have any idea what the expression on a lighter note means? I never stopped to think about it. Is it a musical note or is it a handwritten note? I don't know. Stormtrooper 88, you're wearing my shirt again. Is this literally your shirt? Do you have one like it? Or, and again, have I done this before? I think I actually check. I hate to admit this. I actually check to see what color shirts I wore in the last few weeks. I don't want to come out here and be wearing the same shirt every single time, even though they're a week apart and they've been washed many times since then. So, yeah, offensively, enormous. We kept our ticket stubs in the album sleeve. I used to have a bunch of ticket stubs to shows. I don't have them. I still have the backstage pass to Van Halen, but that's the only thing I have from back then. Ken Wittenberg, what is Michigan like? In what respect? Boomer says there are still AM stations, mainly country and Christian broadcasting. And there's also Christian broadcasting corporations are taking over FM stations as well. So, Padre, if you tell something bad, but then say on a lighter note, I know that. He was talking about the origin of the phrase. I don't know where it came from. 116-3562. Hey, it's crazy how far AM radio will travel. I could pick up WJR in Munising in the middle of the night. I'm only saying this. I like the word Munising. I was in Munising not so long ago. I love that town. WJR's signal carries all the way to Florida and probably out west quite a distance as well. Blazer O2LS. I don't get the groups that run all tube amps, analog decks, and multi-track tape, and then release the music as a digital MP3. By the way, I just saw a video called "Return to Thunderdome." It's on YouTube. It's a documentary. It's half an hour long. It's about My Morning Jacket, a band I love, playing a set at Bonnaroo where a storm came in and just a hellacious torrential downpour while they're on stage outdoors, including the fact that Jim James, the lead singer, routinely is out there barefoot. And they continued to play. Their instruments were soaked. They were getting hosed. The crowd didn't leave. And there were people backstage watching a weather radar to see if there's any lightning. And they're like, as soon as there's lightning, we got to clear these guys out. But as long as there's no lightning, and there was no lightning, and these guys stayed on stage for almost the planned length of their set, completely drenched, probably wrecked their equipment. But it's a great documentary. It's half an hour long. Return to Thunderdome, My Morning Jacket. Right now, 3/4 of you are saying, My Morning Jacket. What's that? And the others are saying, Bono what? So, Belio, this is my shirt. There are many like it, but this one is mine. Canslaw says you need some mods here. Why? Janice Ellery, Paul McCartney is coming back to the U.S., but ticket prices are outrageous. I've heard that. I've also heard you might be doing something with Sting. I've never seen Paul McCartney. I've seen The Police. Witness Multi-Chick saw My Morning Jacket at Coachella. Did you enjoy the show? I saw them at Meadowbrook here in Michigan. An amazing show. And I remember seeing the show, and they played all the songs I wanted to hear them play. And they played a couple I'd never heard before. I'm like, well, that's good too. So, Canslaw, I went to see Gary Newman when I worked at radio at McMaster University in 1982 at a radio show, 50 watts of power in Hamilton, Ontario. Yeah, I've seen Gary Newman now 3 times, but I'd love to have seen him back then. Alex M., have you been to Wisconsin? Yes, a few times. Primarily driving through it. I've not spent a lot of time there. I've got friends from Wisconsin, though. And, of course, Wisconsin, in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, it's one of our border states. So. Cyberdoc, playing in the rain is frightening. I know from experience. Yeah, well, that's the whole point. And they pointed out, they go, yeah, and Jim James routinely plays barefoot. And they showed me standing in the rain, playing guitar, plugged into an amplifier, rain pouring down, and the guy's soaking wet. And you're like, oh. So he actually said, he goes, you know something? It occurred to me that I could get killed. And I thought to myself, well, if I got to check out, this is the way to go. Oh. Witness Multi-Chick said the My Morning Jacket show at Coachella was excellent. Main stage, been a while now. Yeah, and by the way, when they were playing at Bonnaroo on that occasion, they were not as big as they were later. And so it's kind of a cool thing that they did that. Blah, blah, blah. Don't people get killed touching the microphone sometimes? I've seen people get shocked by microphone. I've never seen anybody actual croak from it, but I suppose it's possible. Old McDonald has a car. I saw John Entwistle perform with Alan Parsons and others when they did the Abbey Road tour at DTE Music, or as we call it, Clarkston, Pine Knob. But yeah, no, I did not see that. I've seen Alan Parsons before. Wonderful show. Alan Parsons and his project, as opposed to the Alan Parsons project, but it's him. Everything Stage Lighting says, hi, Steve. Love the show. I was the touring lighting director for dozens of touring artists. Creedence Clearwater Revival, Candlebox, Chris Cornell, Ace Frehley, Back in the New York Groove, and many more. I have stories. Did you have any outdoors where it started to rain? What I'm most curious about is how much damage it did their equipment. This guy's got a Flying V guitar just soaked. Do you take it backstage and hand it to a guitar tech and say, dry that off? I mean, then what about the amplifiers? What about the keyboards? And they can't be good for the equipment. Mr. Bob Newell, do you have a snowmobile? No. In fact, I've never even ridden on a snowmobile. It's one of those things I've just never done it. I've known people with them, but I've never been standing there where somebody goes, hey, want to ride in a snowmobile? It's never happened. So, Alex M., what is the longest snowmobile trail in Michigan? The Upper Peninsula of Michigan has got a whole bunch of interconnected trails that allow you to literally snowmobile for days and days and days if you want to. So I don't know what they add up to, but there's quite a few of them. Look up snowmobiling in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, and you'll find out quite a bit. David C. says Alan Parsons produced many famous records and bands. Oh, yeah. Alan Parsons is one of those guys where you mention the name and they go, oh, yeah. And they name a song like Eye in the Sky or something else like that. The album I, Robot, one of the greatest things ever committed to plastic. But he produced records for other people. And some of them are masterpieces likewise that you've heard. And so he's one of those guys where 24 hours a day was what limited him. If he'd had 48 hours a day, he could have done, twice as much fantastic music. The guy just had an amazing touch and feel, and ear for it that it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And so when I got to see him perform live about 4 or 5 years ago, Royal Music Theater had really good seats. I think I was in the second row or third row. Many people don't stop to think about this, but he's not the lead singer on most of his songs. He has people singing. So there's a guy named Eric Wolfson who sang a lot of his stuff. PJ Olson now sings for him on tour, and different songs have different vocalists, but he was the guy behind the music, putting it all together. And I'm glad I got to see him. He's one of those that I'm glad I got to say that I saw. I saw Jeff Lynne and his band a year ago, and he was supposed to finish his tour and retire at Hyde Park a couple weeks ago, and he had to cancel because of health reasons. And so I got to see him. I had a feeling I'd never get a chance to see him again, but I'm glad I did. So. Witness multi-chick once saw an amp catch fire, then someone threw a pitcher of water on it while the musician was still hooked to it. The crazy world of Arthur Brown, fire. That's cool. I was at a show at Royal Music Theater where the primary band had their stuff set up, and the warm-up band had their stuff set up in front in a smaller area. And they're jumping around trying to be cool. And the guy jumped, and he mistimed his jump, and he kicked his own amplifier over. When he kicked it over, I think it busted the plug out or something, because his guitar went silent after a really bad noise from the amplifier. And there's like 3 guitar techs over there, like trying to rebuild Humpty Dumpty. And it was bad. MacGyver, do you have an email to contact you? Yes. Bob Newell, do you like Buck Cherry? Yeah, I like a song called For the Movies, which got some airplay in Michigan, believe it or not, a long time ago. Fly Chomper Fly. I was backstage in New Haven, Connecticut with the WAVZ DJs when they dragged Jim Morrison off stage. It had to be a while ago because he hasn't been around for a while. Canslot, too. I always like the obscure 80s small groups like Trans X, Living on Video. I'm familiar with the song. Men Without Hats. I saw them live last year at the Totally Tubular Festival. And then, of course, Bronski Beat. And some of those bands are known, quite well known in certain circles, especially if you listen to First Wave on Sirius, they'll play those. KROQ Los Angeles played them. And also 89X out of Windsor played them as well. Michael Beale is 20 feet away as Earl Scruggs played the banjo for the last time. Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs, legendary. Dan Boyd, Ozzy, Sabbath was the real McCoy. You know what's funny about Ozzy Osbourne? I've had some discussions with people in the last couple of weeks about him, and I've had people ask me, what did you think of him? And I said, interestingly enough, I have a few of his albums. I actually own some Ozzy, and he's got some great, great music. Great music. And the funny thing is that people are all about this. Well, what about the Satan worship? And it's like Ozzy Osbourne was one of the first people who figured out that if you do something, it'll tick off the parents of teenagers. Teenagers will look at it, but his music was still good. He wasn't just marketing. He made good music too. He had fantastic musicians, fantastic songwriters, and put out a lot of great music. And when you hear his voice, you're like, that's Ozzy, and that right there is something. So, Hub Jeep, Kajagoogoo, Too Shy. That's a good song too. Dan Packard says YouTube deleted my account when I tried to send you a link. Where were you trying to send a link to? Why would they delete your account? Lance the man says the shirt I want to send you is up your alley, but it's a button up, not a t-shirt. I don't wear a lot of button up shirts or shirts with collars. They got to be real special. No offense. I don't know what you're proposing. Right now, of the 200 shirts in my current rotation, one of them is buttons, but it's a baseball jersey. So it has no collar. It just comes around here and there's buttons down the front, but it's the Detroit Tigers. So I've been wearing that on occasion. I think I've worn it twice so far. Lewis Browning says, I've been on Willie Nelson's bus. I hope you got the smell out of your clothing, my friend, because I just picture Jeff Spicoli's, rolling out of a van in the Ridgemont High parking lot. That's got to be what Willie Nelson's bus is like. Michael M., I haven't heard the name Bronski beat in many years. Small town boy, come on. Mexican Spec, he wasn't just marketing like Gene Simmons. No, he was. He was. I'm pointing out that he had good music too. There have been people out there who try marketing bad music. And so it's interesting because I know people who've never heard his music and they go, well, I heard he's a Satan worshiper. And it's like, yeah, so is Alice Cooper. I've met Alice Cooper, by the way. Nice guy. Mexican Spec says you can't post a link in the chat unless you are a moderator. That could be true. I don't know. I'm not a moderator. Taco Cat, was Kiss just marketing or were they good musicians? I know people who will debate that, but I think they put out some good music. I never owned any of it, but I'm familiar with it, and I think that some of the stuff is pretty good. But I mean, they'll sell you anything. I believe you can buy a Kiss themed coffin. So, standard deviation. Do you own a horsehair wig? I think lawyers be required to own one. I was in London last November, walking down Fleet Street in the area where all the legal stuff is, and there is a clothier there who sells clothing. Oh my gosh, it's past 2:00. Hang on. There's a clothier there who outfits barristers and various legal people, including, I'm guessing, judges. And you could buy from them all kinds of fancy stuff, including the wigs. And I wanted to stop in and ask how much for one. And I'm thinking to myself, would I be tempted to wear it? Probably not. And would I display it? And would it look good on display, or would it just look like I got like a dead possum behind me? So I didn't do it. But I'm curious now to know how much the good ones cost. I have to imagine the good ones are not that itchy. I'd have to think that if you're going to buy something like that, the money would be spent on ones that were not itchy. You wouldn't want to be wearing an itchy thing on your head for a long trial. Mr. Bob Newell's Al Kaline still playing. Al Kaline is one of the greatest baseball players who ever lived, not because of his records or stats, which were pretty good. He played his entire career in Detroit. They signed him as a rookie. He's one of the youngest players when he was brought up, one of the youngest players to have ever played baseball, and played an illustrious career in Detroit. I believe he was on the team in 68 when they won the World Series. He was a machine. The guy was just, he showed up, a hard worker. And this is back before players got these multi-billion-dollar contracts. And I believe he actually had a job in the off season. But great guy. I saw him play a couple times. But yeah, no, he hasn't played in a while. We're talking about a hero from the 1960s and 70s. Dan Boyd, like all kinds of music, including NWA and the Beastie Boys. I'll occasionally mention I like NWA, and people go, "What? What?" I had a tape of NWA when I was in law school. A friend of mine turned me on to them. So, Steve, check this out. Oh boy. Fred Blower's Ozzy Osbourne is now jamming with Randy Rhoads again. The death of Randy Rhoads is one of the craziest, weirdest, saddest stories in rock and roll. The fact that he died the way he did. I'm not going to get into it here, but you can find documentaries about it. You can watch shows about it, and it's just sad because it was a real bad way to go. Tom Rogers, does the thermos keep the margaritas cold? No, but it does keep the Gatorade cold. DePaul 31, a literally got an LK line fielder's mitt. Really? I wonder about what year that would have been. I mean, I remember those guys doing that kind of stuff. I think I had an LK line signature bat, baseball bat, but that would have been a while ago. Believe in yourself, intergalactic, planetary, intergalactic. Oh boy. Yeah, Art asks Coyote versus Acme release date August 28th, 2026. We talked about that at the top. We will, in fact, I'll try to put together a showing someplace. I know you can't all attend, but we'll try to make it someplace moderately central. And then we'll watch the movie and do something. I don't know. We'll figure something out. Yoda Beast K-Line is synonymous with the Detroit Tigers. He is certainly, like, if the Tigers have to have their own Hall of Fame, K-Line's in there. So is Ty Cobb. Ty Cobb got a bad rap just because he was a mean old bastard. Don't forget Cecil Fielder. I was flipping around Facebook yesterday and it was showing Major League Baseball shorts, and I watched it because it was the time Cecil Fielder launched one over the left field roof at the old Tiger Stadium. And I'm not sure if anybody ever done that before, if it's done like twice maybe or something. But you know, there's a lower deck, upper deck, and then a roof. And hitting one over the roof, left field or right field. I believe Mickey Mantle put one over the right field roof during an All-Star game, maybe. I could be wrong about that, but it was something. But yeah, Cecil Fielder, he hit balls really hard. David Peterson, does anyone have Boz Skaggs on their playlist? Yes. Georgia. Actually, he had a bunch of stuff. A lot of good stuff I liked. Cyberdox is a barrister's wig and a convertible Cobra would be epic. Because I do often wear hats in there. Oh, Jay Klein, our Kroger got EV chargers, but they are Shell branded despite Kroger having its own gas station. Yeah, but it's not Kroger brand electricity. Old McDonald has a car. Kirk Gibson hit one over the roof too, but probably the right field roof though, right? Steve, I think Reggie Jackson hit a light pole at Tiger Stadium. Well, you can hit all kinds of other stuff. It's just for the ball to get out of the building. It was very, very difficult back then. Saberdoc, where in the world is Johnny Knoxville? I haven't seen him in a couple of weeks. I haven't heard from him. I'll have to send him a note. Oh, Yoda Beast, Tigers, Mount Rushmore, Cobb, K-Line, Trammell, and Greenberg. Hank Greenberg. Hank Greenberg was another guy a little bit earlier than K-Line, but yeah. Alan Trammell was quite good. Trammell and Whitaker, Lou Whitaker were the two. They turned a ton of double plays, and because of that, they don't get as much attention as they really ought to. But those guys, that infield was just insanely good. Mexican Specs says, oh, I thought he meant that Reggie Jackson had a light pole with his car. Art asks, unfortunately for me, Michigan is moderately central. Cookout at Steve's with the movie showing on the back of the house, probably the only way I'd make the trip. Well, I was thinking about either Ohio or Illinois or Pennsylvania, something like that. Because I don't think if I bring it up into Michigan, there's not as many people north of me as there are south of me. I'm just thinking, if somebody comes along with an old school theater and says, "Hey, we can get the theater for the night. Here's what it's going to cost. We'll get the movie. Here's what that's going to cost." And then, because I'd love to do this in an old theater where there's, like the old school theater, just one screen, show the movie, and then put chairs up on the stage and sit around and talk for a while. And I'll bring in some people. We'll see who I can get there. But it would be fun. It would be fun to do. So we'll see. Sig226, how about the Canadian band Chilliwack? Little Willie. What about them? No, I'm just kidding. Is Matthias checking out? Oh, Matthias, have to go. Bye. Thank you for being here, my friend. I'll continue watching the P.O. box for your package. Old McDonald has a car, points out Sparky Anderson won a World Series in both leagues, was the first to have done so. Sparky was good. Sparky was the one who led them to the World Series in '84. And when he showed up, he made the game more interesting. And so they were doing things like hit and runs and stealing bases and stuff, which they'd been more conservative about in the past. And they stepped it up a bit, and it worked for them. He also had Kirk Gibson on the team, but hey. Canadian Robot Lady actually just checked in, despite the fact that she's not here, saying, "Woot, I'll be there." And just so you know, Heather, you're one of the people I will pay to fly you in so we can have the entire show announced by you. So we can actually say, welcome once again to Lehto's on this very special edition. We're going to watch a movie together. Aaron, could you get Ed there? You mean Ed Bullion? It's hard to say. It depends on the schedule and so on. It's not a car event, but you never know. Green-Eyed Lady, Sugarloaf, Canslaw. There was a bunch of stuff that did not get as much airplay in America as it should have. Pretty Lady by Lighthouse, another great song. I like the Stampeders too. Aaron, just because I thought to ask, can you fly me in? We're still in the planning stage. We'll have to see what the budget is. Oh, boy. Hang on. What am I thinking of? Because Little Willie was sweet. Quite like them, too. Gone, Gone, Gone. She's been gone so long. That's by Chilliwack, right? They're also named after a town, but hang on. Chilliwack, the band. My Girl, Gone, Gone, Gone. The band's lineup has changed many times. They're from Vancouver. Matthew Carruthers says, did you hear that the CEO wants to sue Coldplay for that viral video claiming invasion of privacy? Is there really any credible argument? No, there's not. I saw that somebody said he said that. Until the lawsuit's filed, I will refrain from commenting on how bad that lawsuit would be, because who knows? Maybe he found an attorney who can spin something out of nothing. But when you're standing in public with 50,000 other people, It's hard to say that you thought you were in a private place. Tim Nossum, are you a Devo fan? I like Devo a lot. I've never seen them live. They've already played once in Detroit this year. They're playing again with the B-52s at Pine Knob later this summer. I'm not sure if I will go see them or not. Art S, is there a restored Grand Movie House in Detroit? I'm not sure. I know there's one in Flint. I saw Jay Leno perform there, but I want to do one down a ways. I think that'd work better. The birds are free's got to go. Have a good week. And to you, my friend. Padre, he also said that Coldplay was the worst band in human history. Why was he there? Oh, he didn't think that before the show. He thought that, the greatest thing ever is if they hadn't responded, nobody would have cared. Nobody would have cared. Nobody would know about it. Nothing would have happened. Old McDonald has a car that says the Masonic Temple in Detroit is the largest Masonic temple in the world. Is it really? I've run by it many times because the Free Press Marathon runs by it, but I've never been inside of it. Believe it or not, I've never seen a show there. I am McNate says Fox Theater in downtown Detroit would be perfect. Yeah, but probably expensive. I've seen a lot of shows there. Tim Nossman says the ticket probably says there will be cameras and they can use your likeness. Yeah. The whole we're in public doing something. We got exposed because someone saw us in public. Oh. Tigerman 99515 says that's a long way from the West Coast. How many are from east of the Mississippi? That's what I'm saying. I don't think there's any way that I can make it central to everybody. So I just got to kind of do what I can to kind of make it, available for as many people who can get there. And maybe if we do actually do like a Q&A with some people up there, maybe we can live stream that. We couldn't live stream the movie, obviously. Can's Law is still listing off names of bands. Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. I saw them play live a couple weeks ago here in Royal Oak. They were fabulous. Andrew Kruchowski says you meet in the middle of Lake Erie. Yeah, where it's nice and warm all year round for some weird reason. Everything stage lighting St. Andrew's Hall. I know the guy. Yeah, but the problem with St. Andrew's Hall is do they have seats? I've seen so many shows there. I don't remember ever seeing seating there, though. I think I saw 3 shows there last year. Old McDonald saw Rush Limbaugh and Mark Scott at the Masonic Temple. Those are my 2 favorite radio hosts from WJR back in the day. Wasn't Mark Scott on WXYZ or XYT for a while, though, also? Jerry Dodge, yes, I got the poster. Jerry's the one who sent me the actual poster, the Coyote versus Acme movie, which will be coming out in August of next year. Barirdi, too, first time here. I just like how you're always understandable in pronunciation for the non-Americans. Really? I get complaints about how I talk fast and how I occasionally mumble. But thank you. That's true. Angels Don't Fall 2025 tour. Steve Lehto. Oh. Can's Law 2, Falco, Rock Me Amadeus. Falco 3, the album that Rock Me Amadeus is off of, has several other good songs on it, including Vienna Calling. And of course, Der Kommissar, which is off his first album, is also quite good. But Falco died a few years ago. Car accident down in the Caribbean. But I love me, my Falco. You can go online and see him performing in Austria and Germany live. Rock Me Amadeus. You've never seen so many people go nuts at one time. Love that song. For some odd reason, does not get any airplay in America on oldies stations. I think they consider it a novelty for some weird reason. Andrew Kuchowski says we could buy the Nimitz or a Nimitz class carrier and turn it into an amusement park. Yeah, Sig 226 Falco, Vienna calling. That's a great video too. Oh. Taco Cats says, look at the historic Ohio Theater in Toledo. Yeah, so if there's something like that, I gotta get some pricing. I've had some people contact me and say, "Hey, Steve, I know a guy who's got a theater, and it's like in Bug Tussle, Kentucky, and it's in a small town, but it seats so many people, and here's what it would cost you." And if it looks relatively central, I mean, we can turn into a whole thing, because my point is we don't want to do it at a theater with 75 screens because they don't want us to get the hell out of there. And it isn't that we just want to go and watch the movie and then leave. I want to go hang out for a while beforehand, talk and meet people, maybe give away some books or something, and then show the movie. And then afterwards we'll have a Q&A. But we won't be able to talk about the movie like the creators, because we didn't make the darn thing. Everything Stage Lighting says you can add up to 410 chairs at St. Andrew's Hall. Oh, Kanslaw, did you used to buy the 12-inch extended versions or the dubbed versions of 80s songs? I usually find out what song I liked and buy the version of it I liked. I didn't like some of the extended mixes they did back then, where they take some songs 4 minutes long and make it 9 minutes long. Wasn't too crazy about that myself, but I remember hearing them in clubs. Craig, hey, Steve just joined in from Phoenix. Thank you, my friend. We got 20 minutes left. John S. from Tennessee, you were talking about Coyote versus Acme, the movie that they killed and they brought back. And then, but by the way, Belio, there actually apparently is a place called Bug Tussle. I looked it up. Steve, I'll only go if the seats are made by Acme. Ed Hub, have you ever flashed your high beams to warn others? Not recently, but in the old days I used to. Most of my modern vehicles they're so different from each other. I usually can't think of it fast enough. Daniel Kester, rent out Madison Square Garden. How about Carnegie Hall in New York? John Michael Karma, the old Redford movie theater. You mean at Redford, Michigan? Because I remember hearing about that, because didn't it have a pipe organ? Wasn't that a big deal? Stanley Gustafson, what does F1 race coverage and a Steve Lehto live stream have in common? Both are filled with great spoken knowledge without commercial interruptions. I think there's all kinds of weird noises in the background or something, but oh, Lewis Browning booked a show at the Silverdome. We could, but Amazon wouldn't let us. The site of the old Silverdome, which sat vacant for a little while, has been replaced by a monstrous Amazon super warehouse distribution center that you can see from space. In fact, you can see it from your house, wherever you might live. Andrew Kruchowski, bring your own anvil premiere. Airplane mechanic, I've tried to flash my high beams to warn somebody, and I accidentally put on my windshield wipers. Steve G, can I bring my own chair? What I'll do is I'll bring the chair that used to be on my set. I still have it. And we'll auction that off for charity, and I'll give it to somebody. They can watch the movie sitting in my old chair if they want to. How's that? Ella Thea, I do love a dance mix. Yeah, but not on the radio, That's the thing. I remember listening to some radio programs. The guy's like, hey, I've got the 15-minute long dance mix of this. It's like, especially when it's techno music and you can just tell that it's cut and paste and a bunch of stuff, you know? So Tigerman99515 says Lebanon, Kansas would be the geographic center of the lower 48. But do we go to the geographic center or the population center? Mark Miller, I can't believe the 20-ish year old Mile High Stadium in Colorado is considered non-profitable now and is going to be replaced. That's the amazing thing. And what's sad is if you go back and look at the promises that were made when they built it, they'd say things like, well, we need tax breaks and we need, lend us some money and maybe float a bond or something. And this will be making us money for 100 years into the future. And 20 years later, they're going, this outdated piece of garbage, we got to get rid of this. Art S says, yes, the chair has been mentioned. But see, here's the thing. I mentioned the old chair, not the new chair. I believe there is a subset of chairs that hadn't been mentioned until just now. Oh. Spaghetti Man, Human League was cool. Human League. Don't you want me? And the funny thing about the Human League is I remember when that song was taking over radio. It was being played in every format. Rock and roll stations played that song. Top 40 stations. But I'm surprised country stations didn't play it. And I remember reading an article in Radio and Records magazine, a trade journal for radio back then, and a program director who was programming in some huge station, very, very successful. And he actually said, he goes, what we need now is more songs like Human League's Don't You Want Me. It's a perfect radio song. Send me another song like that and I'll play it. And like a week later, the guy guarantees something else entirely different. Oh, boy. Angels don't fall. I'm only human. Sig 226 was that 82 or 83? Right about there. Right about there. 'Cause I worked in Bad Axe. Those are the 2 years I worked in Bad Axe. I don't remember what phase of, I remember hearing that song, and I remember that song being on the that song was on the jukebox at the Pizza Hut in Bad Axe. I know that. Tigerman99515. We're talking about the chair that I sit in right there. That's a fancy chair, which replaced a wooden chair, which replaced a folding chair. And when I first did something that revealed the chair I was sitting in, people recoiled in horror that I was sitting in a folding chair. And I'm like, I need the chair to be in the exact same spot. It can't move. And if it rocks this way, it's not good either. So I had the folding chair. So then one day I was driving by a garage sale. I saw the wooden chair for sale, $5. I bought it. I replaced the folding chair with that chair. People are like, oh, dude, that's a piece of junk. I'm like, why do you care? You're not sitting in it. I am. So then when a sponsor came along and gave me the chair I'm sitting in right now and gave me that chair also, I finally swapped the chair up, put that chair there, and then I had people going, well, what are you going to do with the old chair? Now people miss it. They feel sorry for it. So I said, what I'm probably going to do is auction it off for charity one of these days. And that would be a great occasion to do that. I can see us killing a good 5 minutes with that. Africa Bambata. Oh, I've got a mixtape that's got that on there. I'm having a mental blank on the song I'm thinking of. Is it World Destruction? Africa Bambata. Yeah, Witness Multi Chicks is Gary Newman's still rocking it recently. I've heard. Yeah, no, I've seen him recently a few times. So, Belio, how about the recliner you did the ad spot for? Yeah, I can't fit that back there though. Craig, do you remember Howard Stern on W4 in Detroit? Yes. 1979, 1980s, right around there. And then W4 changed formats. They went country. And I remember turning on the radio one Sunday morning. They're playing country music. I'm like, what the heck just happened? And Howard Stern was just gone. Went to DC from there. So Janice Ellery, do people have a chair fetish? No, you don't understand. People will talk about anything. They'll fixate on anything. And once someone mentions it, it'll become a huge thing. So Kanslaw, please tell me that you know who Strange Advance is. And don't tell me We Run, but instead tell me Worlds Away by Strange Advance is a great song. And Strange Advance was huge in the early 80s. And they recently toured last year, I believe, and some this year. I simply cannot find a location that I can get to that doesn't conflict with my schedule. I was going to go see them. They're playing, I think, in Edmonton, but unfortunately, it conflicts with something. I mean, I was gonna fly to Edmonton just to see Strange Advance do one song, but unfortunately, I had a conflict. So if they ever come to, you know, Ontario, I'll go see them if I can. But tell me you know them, please. Offensively, Norm, or what's the reserve on the chair? No, nothing. I don't. If I bring it there to get rid of it, I'm getting rid of it. Ken's losses, yes. Strange Advance. Dimebag Coins. I'm in Edmonton. Jerry Dodge just invited my family to see Avatar, which is a metal band in Louisville, the Sunday after Thanksgiving. Yeah, my morning jacket's from Louisville also. Oh boy. The birds are free. You're still here? Oh boy. Kanslaw says 12-inch of We Run. I don't like that song as much. It's often the case I like something else. Sig226, remember when a radio station here in Nashville changed their format? They played Closing Time by Semisonic. That's a great song. I love that song. Bob Blah Blah says, I think the chairs would be a lovely addition to the Lehto Shirt Museum. You know, I've had people ask me, why don't I do something with the shirts I've retired? I've actually brought some back out, but I realized I've got way too many. I suppose I could probably get a bunch of them, launder them, and then bring them and, I don't know, have a sale of some sort and raise money for. We have to come up with a charity that everyone can agree on, because I'll probably pick some charity that people are like, no, you can't. Those people are evil, you know? Tiger Man, how's that work? You get the money for the charity and you donate it? Yeah. I would, let's pick a charity and I'll donate it. John Michael Karma says, yeah, but would you take a Learjet to see a total eclipse of the sun? Close, close. I'm at this. See, here's the problem. There are bands I've wanted to see that I can no longer see. Okay. And so, you know, if I wanted to go see Ozzy Osbourne, obviously I'm out now, right? And so I think to myself how sad it is that I could have gone to see some of these bands that I'd regret later. And so that's one of the bands that's, you know, that's one of the songs. Yoda B says I could donate the money to the Institute for Justice. I could. There you go. Cyberdoc says most charities take 70% of the proceeds. You mean they take? I know people who raise money for charities routinely take money for money raising, but. And as Matthew Carruthers says, just make it simple. Do it for the Institute for Justice. Actually, you know, it's really funny. I could probably get some people from the Institute for Justice to show up. That might be fun. I mean, I'm not saying turn it into a huge legal lecture, but that might be fun. Yeah, Witness Multi-Chick. No Prince, no David Bowie. I saw David Bowie twice. Never saw Prince, though. I remember when Prince first came out before 1999. I'm talking about earlier. And he played Ann Arbor with two other acts that I'd heard of. and I wanted to go see a show, and none of my friends would go with me, so I didn't go. And I kind of wish I had. Lewis Browning says rent out the Cherry Bowl Drive-In Theater. There's a drive-in movie theater up near Traverse City. I drove by it about a couple months ago. Pretty cool place. It's kind of out there though. I would go there and 3 people would show up if I was lucky. Tigerman 99515 Bowie. Yeah, he played the Palace in Auburn Hills. And I also saw him play the Pontiac Silverdome. One of those tours, his guitar player was Peter Frampton, which was kind of cool. It's like, when somebody like Bowie calls, he goes, "Hey, are you doing anything right now? Okay, you want to tour with me?" Peter Frampton says yes. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Michael M., my wife dragged me to a Prince show. It was awesome. Witness multi-chick, damn you, Steve, for seeing the Bowie. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen some bands I haven't seen. Jay Klein, my brother did sound for Prince and MC Hammer. We're all 75 people on stage mic'd for MC Hammer. MC Hammer is famous for having a couple hits and hiring all of his friends to be in his band, to where he was like, his overhead was insane. Oh, Kansas, the flying lizards. Don't even get me going about that. The flying lizards were a bad joke. And I actually knew people who bought their stuff. And I'm like, why would you do that? I kind of like it. Yeah. Okay, sure. MH08 actually met Prince twice. Nice guy. I heard from people that he's a very nice guy, very quiet, very, very private, Belio, back in the day, a friend of mine used to ride his bike to the airbase in Tennessee and sneak into the Airmen's Club to see Jimi Hendrix. Stuff like that. There's no way to top that. Canslop pop music by M. New York, London, Paris, Munich. Everybody's talking about pop music. Yeah, Dan Boyd, MC Hammer, is famous for going broke fast. I heard he's a nice guy. He's just generous. And a lot of people who are generous don't realize how quickly money can disappear when you're giving it away. Yeah, JC Boom agrees that the Institute for Justice might make the most sense here. And by the way, if you in fact hadn't heard us at the top of the show, I actually did appear on the Institute for Justice's Short Circuit podcast, which is a video on their channel on YouTube. So if you type in Institute for Justice and Short Circuit, or Short Circuit Steve Lehto, or whatever, you'll find me, along with another guest and a host, and 3 of us discussing legal issues for a half hour. I had fun. And like I said, the producer, before we started, said, "Steve, are you sure you want that background behind you?" And I said, "Yeah, don't worry. My viewers know what it means." Jay Klein, my brother, was on Hammer's first big tour. And yeah, he had his crew, dudes he just paid to hang around. I remember listening to Casey Kasem back in like 1990, 91, 89, 90, 91, whenever MC Hammer's songs were out. And of course, you can't touch this. But then, of course, you had Pray, Pray, Pray. You've got to pray just to make it today. Pray, pray, pray. And I remember Casey Kasem, half the time the trivia he had was just stupid stuff. He had guys sitting around with nothing better to do, as they go, count how many times the word pray was said in this song. And I remember Casey Kasem coming on and going, interesting fact about MC Hammer's most recent entry into the charts is that the title of the song is Pray. And we've done the math and checked it out. And the word pray, which is the title to the song, appears in the song like 178 times. The most in any song ever for the title to be in the song. Now, here's MC Hammer. It's like, who cares? Oh. Steam Runner, do you ever have problems with people evading your process servers? No, but I once did a video about serving process on people. I've served probably 10 or 15 people in my life because I was bored. Oh, I have to go check to see that video is still up or not. I've served some people. It's always fun. There you go. You're served. What's this? It's a lawsuit. I had a guy once try to give it back to me. And I'm like, doesn't matter if you give it back, you're still served. Joel Jensen, Art Bell was king of late night talk radio. Old McDonald has a car, Pillow Talk. Yeah, Alan Almond. Alan Almond. The guy would talk so quiet, he had the microphone like up his nose, basically. Like, I can't do it, but I remember listening and just, oh, you know, the lady in red. And now. Played that like every other song, The Lady in Red. John Michael Karma, I could have written that song. Pray? Pray? Cyberdoc says I was 17 drunk and a caravan was stopped at a dive bar on the way home from the shore. The band was the J Miles Band, a tribute group. Jerry Dodge, I've been recently served a lawsuit of $7,000 for a maxed out credit card with Capital One. Yeah, if you've been served, the number one thing to make sure you do is make sure you answer the complaint and talk to an attorney about doing that. You might be able to do it on your own, or you might have to hire an attorney to do it for you. Quite often, if somebody's suing you over a credit card, you might be able to negotiate a better deal. The worst thing you do is to do nothing, which means that you just get defaulted. They get a judgment against you. And the next thing you hear about is them trying to serve you with a writ of execution to take your stuff, empty your bank accounts, or intercept your tax returns. So, of course, the judgment is big enough and important enough, you may take a look at bankruptcy. I'm talking generally here, but yeah, that's something you got to worry about. Stelliger says, I was in Michigan at the time and I could do a knock 'em dead imitation of Alan Ullman, and that was back in college. My voice was anomalous with my looks. What's funny is Alan Almond actually never allowed himself to be photographed. He had no publicity photos. Every story they ran in the news, they did not show his face, or occasionally he'd have something in front of his face like this, and I saw some photographs of that. And then when he passed away, they ran some photographs, but it was unclear if they were actually of him or when they were taken. And the weird thing is that I read an interview with him, and he told the interviewer that he'd been recognized by his voice, but he also had women call him and say, "Hey, how come you never called me back?" He's like, "Who is this?" And they're like, I'm the woman you went out with last week." And he's like, "Sorry, that wasn't me." Oh. Angels Don't Fall says the F word was used many times in the Rob Zombie, The Devil's Rejects. And I love Rob Zombie's White Zombie, More Human Than Human. Tim Nosme taking a car out after this live. You know, it's nice out right now. It might not be a bad day, although I think it's still hot out there. So I can probably take the Cobra out today. Not a bad thing to do, although I got 89 degrees right now outside, so got to keep it moving to keep it cool. Daniel Kester, can a bankruptcy attorney expect to be paid? Yes. Bankruptcy laws specifically say that one of the things that a person who's applying for bankruptcy can do is pay for an attorney. Otherwise, the courts will be dealing with all kinds of people filing for bankruptcy without attorneys, and it become a mess. And it's not that expensive either. I know a very good friend of mine who does a bankruptcy law, and what he charges, I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, I do them by volume. Tigerman 99515 intercepting a tax return. Yeah, I'm talking about your refund. Sorry. Oh boy. Kansla, I want to be a cowboy. My name is Ted. Yeah. Boys don't cry. Daniel Kester says, remember to take the camera out with you, take the Cobra out. You know, I finally took the doors off my Jeep. I shot a video of me driving my Jeep around with the top down, but the doors were on it. I finally took the doors off because I ordered extra mirrors because the doors have the mirrors attached to them. And I didn't want a police officer pulling me over and going, hey, you're missing your side mirrors. So I bought some mirrors that bolt into the door hinge mounts. And so now my Jeep's got side mirrors, but no doors, no roof, no sides, no nothing. So I might put some cameras on it later this week and go for a drive in the Jeep, fully opened up, because that's a lot of fun on some country roads out there somewhere. Although I did that the other, when I shot the first video with the doors on it, I had several people go, that's illegal. What you're doing there, that's illegal. And I'm not even sure what they think was illegal. But anyways, apparently it's illegal to drive, I guess. I don't know. But Cyberdoc, wear the barrister wig in the Jeep. So there you go. Hey, it's 3:05. I've been doing this for over 2 hours. Had a great time. The time flew by. In fact, I've still got some of my Gatorade left. I will talk to you guys very, very soon. Watch the videos during the week like you always do. And I'll try to do a pop-up. Somebody asked about that a second ago. I try to do pop-ups every now and then. It depends on my schedule. And here I am talking real fast. I'll slow down. And we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.